If thought was visible to the physical eye, we should see its currents flowing to and from people. We should see that persons similar in temperament, character, and motive are in the same literal current of thought. We should see that the person in a despondent and angry mood was in the same current with others despondent or angry, and that each one in such moods serves as an additional battery or generator of such thought, and is strengthening that particular current. We should see these forces working in similar manner and connecting the hopeful, courageous, and cheerful with all others hopeful, courageous, and cheerful. When you are low in spirits or blue, you have acting upon you the thought current coming from all others in low spirits. You are in oneness with the despondent order of thought. The mind is then sick. It can be cured, but a permanent cure cannot always come immediately when one has long been in the habit of opening the mind to this current of thought. If a group of people talk of any form of disease or suffering, of deathbed scenes and dying agonies, if they cultivate this morbid taste for the unhealthy and ghastly, and it forms their staple topics of conversation, they bring to themselves a light current of thought, full of images of sickness, suffering, and things revolting to a healthy mind. This current will act upon them and eventually bring them disease and suffering in some form. If we are talking much of sick people, or are much among them and thinking of them, be our motive what it may, we shall draw to ourselves a current of sickly thought, and its ill results will, in time, materialize itself in our bodies. We have far more to do to save ourselves than is now realized. When men talk business together, they attract a business current of idea and suggestion. The better they agree, the more of this thought current do they attract, and the more do they receive of idea and suggestion for improving and extending their business. In this way does the conference or discussion among the leading members of the company or corporation create the force that carries their business ahead. Travel in first-class style, put up at first-class hotels, and dress in apparel as costly as your purse can buy without running into the extreme of foppishness. In these things you find aids to place you in a current of relative power and success. If your purse does not now warrant such expenditure, or you think it does not, you can commence so living in mind. This will make you take the first steps in this direction. Successful people in the domain of finance unconsciously live up to this law. Desire for show influences some to this course. But there is another force and factor which so impels them. That is a wisdom of which their material minds are scarcely conscious. It is the wisdom of the Spirit telling them to get in the thought current of the successful, and by such current be born to success. It is not a rounded-out success, but good as far as it goes. If our minds are, from what is falsely called economy, ever set on the cheap lodgings, cheap food, and cheap fares, we get in the thought current of the cheap and the fearful. Our views of life and our plans will be influenced and warped by it. It paralyzes that courage and enterprise implied in the old adage, nothing ventured, nothing gained. Absorbed in this current, and having it ever acting upon you, it is felt immediately when you come into the presence of the successful and causes them to avoid you. They feel in you the absence of that element which brings them their relative success. It acts as a barrier, preventing the flow to you of their sympathy. Sympathy is a most important factor in business. Despite opposition and competition, a certain thought current of sympathy binds the most successful together. The mania for cheapness lies in the thought current of fear and failure. The thought current of fear and failure and the thought current of dash, courage, and success will not mingle, nor bring together the individuals who are in these respective streams of thought. They antagonize, and between the two classes of mind is built a barrier more impenetrable than walls of stone. When people come together and in any way talk out their ill will towards others, they are drawing to themselves with tenfold power an injurious thought current, because the more minds are united on any purpose, the more power do they attract to effect that purpose. The thought current so attracted by those chronic complainers, grumblers, and scandalmongers will injure their bodies, because whatever thought is most held in mind is most materialized in the body. If we are always thinking and talking of people's imperfections, we are drawing to us ever of that thought current, and thereby incorporating into ourselves those very imperfections. Gossip is fascinating. There is an exhilaration in scandal, and the raking over of our friends' or neighbors' or enemies' faults is almost equal to that produced by champagne. But in the end, we pay dearly for these pleasures. If but two people were to meet at regular intervals and talk of health, strength, and vigor of body and mind, at the same time opening their minds to receive of the Supreme the best idea as to the ways and means for securing these blessings, they would attract to themselves a thought current of such idea. If these two people or more kept up these conversations on these subjects at a regular time and place, and found pleasure in such communings, and they were not forced or stilted, if they could carry them on without controversy, and enter into them without preconceived idea, and not allow any shade of tattle or tale-bearing or censor of others to drift into their talk, they would be astonished at the year's end at the beneficial results to mind and body. Because in so doing and coming together with a silent demand of the Supreme to get the best idea, they would attract to themselves a current of life-giving force. Let two so commence rather than more, for even two persons in the proper agreement and accord to bring the desired results are not easy to find. The desire for such meetings must be spontaneous, and any other motive will bar out the highest thought current for good. If you dwell a great deal on your own faults, you will by the same laws attract more and more of their thought current, and so increase those faults. It is enough that you recognize in yourself those faults. Don't always say of yourself, "I am weak or cowardly or ill-tempered or imprudent." Draw to yourself rather the thought current of strength, courage, even temper, prudence, and all other good qualities. Keep the image of these qualities in mind, and you make them a part of yourself. All things that are evil and imperfect, such as disagreeable traits of character in others, things unpleasant to hear or look upon, should be gotten out of our minds as quickly as possible. Otherwise, if dwelt upon, they attract to themselves of their thought current. They will then become permanent spiritual fixtures, and these will, in time, materialize themselves into corresponding physical fixtures. If we are always keeping in mind the person doing some wrong thing, we are the more apt to do that very thing ourselves. Let us endeavor, then, with the help of the Supreme Power, to get into the thought current of things that are healthy, natural, strong, and beautiful. Let us try to avoid thoughts of disease, of suffering, of deformity, of faultiness. If we read books written by cynical, sarcastic minds who are so warped as to be able to see only the faults of others, at last unable to see good anywhere, we bring into ourselves their unhealthy thought current and are one with it. The arrow always tipped with ill nature and sarcasm is deadliest to him who sends it. In other words, the man who is ever inviting and cultivating this thought current is inviting the unrest, disease, and misfortune it will assuredly bring to him, and when we get too much into his mind, we invite similar results. When an evil is known, it is half cured. Bear in mind, when you are in any unpleasant frame of mind, that a thought current of such disagreeable mood is acting upon you. Bear in mind that you are then one in a sort of electrical connection with many other sickly and morbid minds, all generating and sending unpleasant thoughts to each other. The next thing to be done is to pray or demand to get out of this current of evil thought. You cannot do this wholly of your own individual effort. You must demand of the Supreme Power to divert it from you. We can more and more invite the thought current of things that are lively, sprightly, and amusing. Life should be full of playfulness. Continued seriousness is but a few degrees removed from gloom and melancholy. Thousands live too much in the thought current of seriousness. Faces which wear a smiling expression are scarce. Some never smile at all. Some have forgotten how to smile, and it actually hurts them to smile or to see others do so. Sickness and disease are nursed into fresher and fresher activity by the serious mood of mind. Many material things are helps to divert a thought current from acting disagreeably upon you. You may have daily a set of disagreeable symptoms. They may seem to come as adjuncts to the daily routine of life. The breakfast table, the furniture, the conversation, and even the persons immediately about you seem to recall them. Travel sometimes banishes them entirely. The sight of different surroundings diverts that particular thought current. Material remedies may temporarily affect the same result. So may any change of life or occupation. But all these are secondary aids to the Supreme Power. The thought current of fear is everywhere. All humanity fears something: disease, death, loss of fortune, loss of friends, loss of something. Everyone has his or her pet fear. It extends to the most trivial details of life. The more sensitive you are to the impress of thought, the more liable are you to be affected by this thought current of fear, until your spirit, by constant demand of the Supreme Power, builds up for itself an armor of thought, positive to this current, and one which will deny it access. You can commence this building by saying, whenever you are affected in the way mentioned, or in any disagreeable fashion, I refuse to accept this thought and the mental condition it has brought upon me which affects my body. You commence then to turn aside the thought current of evil. Everyone has some pet fear, some disease they may never have had but always dreaded, something they are in special fear of losing, some trifle, even but a word or sentence uttered by another, brings this pet fear to the mind. Instantly, through long habit, the mind reverts to this fear. Instantly, it opens to it, and the whole thought, volume, and current rushes to and acts upon it. It acts and vibrates on that particular chord of your nature, which for years has sounded your pet weakness. Then, in some way, the body is affected disagreeably. There are myriads of different symptoms. The body may become weak and tremulous. There may be loss of appetite, a dry mouth, a bad taste in the mouth, weakness in the joints, drowsiness, difficulty concentrating the mind on your business, and many other disagreeable sensations. Place yourself in a house where there has recently been a panic or scare, though you may know nothing of it. You were well and strong the day before. You arise in the morning, and soon this whole train of disagreeable sensations affects you, because the house or place is saturated with a thought current of fear. Put a fear on city, town, or country of some deadly epidemic or some great calamity, and hundreds of the more sensitive, who may have no fear of that epidemic or calamity, are still affected by it disagreeably. That thought current affects them in their particular weak spot. The more impressionable you are to the thought about you, the more are you liable to be thus affected. But you can train your mind to shut out this thought. You can gradually train it to bar tightly this door to weakness and keep open only the one to strength. You can do this by cultivating the mood of drawing to yourself and keeping in the mood and current of thought coming of God or the supreme power for good. Impressionability or capacity to receive thought is a source either of strength or weakness. Fine-grained, sensitive, highly developed minds today often carry the weakest bodies, because through ignorance they are always inviting some of these thought currents of evil without any knowledge of their existence or the means of throwing them off. They are ignorantly either courting or exposing themselves to such current. Improper individual association is one chief source of such exposure. As you place your reliance upon the infinite mind to bring you out of all these agencies for ill, that mind in some way will bring many material aids to help you out. That mind will suggest medicines and foods and surroundings and changes, not only to help you temporarily, but permanently, so that when you are cured for all time. A cheerful, buoyant, hopeful mind will help you to get out of the injurious thought current. The more you get into the thought current coming from the infinite mind, making yourself more and more a part of that mind, the quicker are you freshened and renewed, physically and mentally. You become continually a newer being. Changes for the better come more and more quickly. Your power increases to bring results. You lose gradually all fear, as it is proven more and more to you that when you are in the thought current of infinite good, there is nothing to fear. You realize more and more clearly that there is a great power and force which cares for you. You are wonderstruck at the fact that when your mind is set in the right direction, all material things come to you with very little physical or external effort. You will see in this demand for the highest good that you are growing to power greater than you ever dreamed of. It will dawn upon you that the real life destined for the awakened few now and the many in the future is a dazzling dream, a permanent realization that it is a happiness to exist, a serenity and contentment without abatement, a transition from pleasure to pleasure and from the great to the greater pleasure. You find, as you get more and more into the current of the infinite mind, that exhausting toil is not required of you, but that when you commit yourself in trust to this current and let it bear you where it will, all things needful will come to you. When you are getting into the right thought current, you may for a time experience more of uneasiness, physical and mental, than ever. This is because the new element acting upon you makes you more sensitive to the presence of evil. The new is driving the old out. The new thought current searches and detects every little error in your mind before unnoticed and repels it. This causes a struggle and mind and body are, for a time, unpleasantly affected by it. It is like house cleaning, a process usually involving a good deal of dust and disturbance. The new spirit you call to yourself is cleaning your spiritual house. There is no limit to the power of the thought current you can attract to yourself, nor limit to the things that can be done through the individual by it. In the future, some people will draw so much of the higher quality of thought to themselves that by it they will accomplish what some would call miracles. In this capacity of the human mind for drawing a thought current, ever increasing in fineness of quality and power, lies the secret of what has been called magic.